Good morning. We want to welcome each of you to our January the 14th meeting. We want to say welcome to those who are in our audience and to those who are viewing us by way of television. We appreciate your interest in county government. I shall now call our meeting to order, and we shall have our roll call. Can I also have a motion to excuse Commissioner Colson?
Second.
He is still recovering from his surgery.
Second.
Now you can vote on the motion to excuse Mr. Coulson.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to note the absence of Commissioner Colson.
Yes, we just voted on excusing him. Thank you. Okay, let's stand for our invocation and pledge, and Commissioner James will lead us in the pledge, but first of all, we will have our invocation. Father, we thank you this morning for your many blessings upon us. We thank you for the opportunity of assembling together as a community. We thank you, Father, for each one that is here and for their interest in county government. We pray that you might be with us as a board this morning, that we might do all things that we do to glorify you and to serve those that we represent. These blessings we pray in your holy name. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It has been suggested for efficiency's sake that we move the recognition of employees, item 8, up to an item right after the approval of our agenda. So could I have a motion that we approve our agenda with that change? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's vote. Okay, thank you. And we shall now recognize our employees for their service awards.
Good morning. This morning, as we normally do on a quarterly basis, we'd like to recognize our workforce within Pitt County government, and we recognize the employees who have served and worked 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20, 25, 30, and sometimes 35 years. And today we will be going all the way to 35 years. So as I call, if we can hold our applause until the end of each category, we'll start with our 35-year. Well, let's go ahead and we'll start from the 35-year. We'll recognize at the top. You good with that? I'm going to throw Florida for Louis here. Again, today we have one 35-year employee in the Public Health Department. If Cindy Sibbett will come forward, I'd like to recognize you for your long tenure and career. Is she here? Okay. In the 25-year category, we have two employees. We have, from Tax Administration, Teresa Elks. Smile for the picture. Congratulations. Also in 25 years, Wanda Uhas, the Industrial Development Commission. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, round of applause, please. All right, in the 20-year category, we have one employee we're recognizing this morning in the Public Health Department, Jacqueline Mills. And as we always tell the audience, in the 20-year category, the employee gets to pick out a watch at 20 years as part of their award. This will be to watch the next 10 glorious years with our organization. So, congratulations. 6. Okay. 6 years. Good job. All right, in 15 years, we have 3 employees. First, from the detention center, Fanny Brown. Okay, she's not here. Okay, buildings and grounds, David Cherry.
Joe
And third, Gail Haddock from Social Services. Congratulations. Give them applause. All right, in the tenure category, we'll start with in solid waste and recycling, Teresa Mills. Okay. Robert Taylor, Detention Center. Congratulations. And Tina Worthington, Social Services. Not here, okay. All right, applause, please. All right, within our 5-year category, we have about 15 employees. Start with Susan Armstrong at the Detention Center. Congratulations. Catherine Acock, Social Services. Congratulations. Lynn Carter, Public Health.
Thank you.
Eric Clay, Buildings and Grounds. Carolyn Edmonds, Social Services. David Flynn, Sheriff's Office. Congratulations. Juana Gonzalez, Social Services. Emma Holscher, Social Services. Congratulations. Keita House, Public Health. Thank you. Okay, not here. Thomas Jones, Detention Center. Congratulations. Thomas Knight, Social Services. Congratulations. Daniel LeBron, MIS, Management Information Systems. Congratulations. Whoop.
I tried.
Okay, Wanda Murphy, Social Services. Joseph Neal, Sheriff's Office. Congratulations. Valerie Pill, Social Services. Congratulations. Amy Rigg, Social Services. Congratulations. Noel Slocum, Social Services. Congratulations. And our last 5-year recognition is to Christopher Sayers, Sheriff's Office. Congratulations.
Let me say we thank each one of you for your contribution to our community. You are a very, very valued asset to our community, and we appreciate everything you do. To show our appreciation, we're going to have a little reception now, and we would like for those who were recognized to go first. You can go through this door and come out this door, and everyone in here is invited to join us in the refreshments. Thank you. Welcome back to our meeting. We now have two public hearings. The first one is for Barnhill Contracting on a rezoning request, and Mr. Rhodes is going to present that.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We do have two public hearings. Both are dealing with the same property, and do want to remind you we've got a process by which we need to go through. These are related. The first one is a standard rezoning. The second one deals with a conditional use permit on that same property. So with the rezoning, we need to strictly look at, is this an appropriate area for this type of zoning? And we'll deal with the specific land use on the second public hearing. So our county attorney will remind us if we get off the discussion point a bit. The property in question actually contains two parcels, and these are located on near the intersection of Gum Swamp Road and Roosevelt Spain Road. The current comprehensive land use plan designation is suburban residential, and this is the property in question. Again, on Gum Swamp Church Road, here's Roosevelt Spain Road coming in at an intersection point here. The Department of Transportation has been involved with this already because of the intersection alignment of those two secondary roads, and have already determined where the driveway will be, and I'll show that in just a minute with the site plan. As far as the aerial, you can already see there is some activity already on this property, an old mining operation. The remainder of it is basically open farmland. And suburban residential, again, this is right on the edge. Gum Swamp Church Road is the designation, or the boundary of this designation of suburban residential. So just across there is your rural residential. So right on the fringe of the suburban residential designation in the land use plan, and you're familiar with those types of definitions that go along with that area. It is determined to be distinguished by a greater potential for development. Again, it is right on the fringe, so in this area, especially north of the river, there's been a lot slower development than anticipated in the past. This map pretty much shows what I was just speaking about. You can see as far as a zoning requirement, the dark green on the upper right portion of the screen designates the rural agricultural zoning area. You can see there's already one site just to the south of this property that's already been changed from what it was originally rural residential to rural agricultural, pretty much for the same purpose we're talking about today. The rural agricultural district, again, we're talking about for rezoning going from rural residential to rural agricultural, is basically a down zoning. You don't often hear that much when we come before you. Usually you're going for a more intensive use, and this time it's actually going down to a less intensive use. It is for low-intensity commercial uses, agricultural related, and industrial uses, which are interspersed throughout these areas. As far as our request here today, we're looking at, given the existing rural agricultural zone properties adjacent to and within close proximity, as I said, we're right at the boundary. The rezoning request is in general conformance with the land use plan, and we believe it does meet the requirements of the rural agricultural district. The planning board also reviewed this in December and similarly voted to unanimously recommend approval of this request. And as you recall, at our last meeting when we dealt with the rezoning, there is new language that we need to ensure that's included in the motion, not only to state that it's consistent with the land use plan, but it is reasonable and in the public interest. And with that, Mr. Chairman, we welcome the public hearing.
I now declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this request? Come forward, state your name and your address.
Jonathan Proctor. I'm with Barnhill Contracting Company. It's 2311 North Main Street, Tarboro, 27886. Good morning, Board, and thank you for allowing us to come before you with this request. This request, as Mr. Rose said, will go in hand, hopefully, with the conditional use application for a sand pit. In regards to the rezoning application, we tried to find property in an area that's not densely populated, that's not commercialized on the sort. But we also have to find property that will meet our needs in terms of quality of material. It has to be sand that's not too fine but not too coarse. So there's a little bit of a catch that we have to find an area that's got the material but that's also not densely populated where it would affect the land. We believe that we found a piece that fits both of these criteria. There's limited residential use around. Most of it's undeveloped agriculture and then timberland across the road. There's also a sand pit that's being used directly adjacent, as was shown on that slide. That's already zoned rural agricultural. The property immediately across the road is also rural agricultural, so it won't alienate this property. It'll kind of tie it in with all of that. So with that, and on the terms of rezoning, we ask that you would approve this request. Thank you.
Does anyone else would like to speak in favor of this request? Anyone like to speak against this request? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
May we have a motion and a second?
Let me ask some questions. All right, James, the graveyard is down. It don't come up to the graveyard, does it? You know what I'm talking about? I'm very familiar with all this property.
Mr. James, you'll have to, I don't recall, it's not a graveyard.
Yes, it is right there. The curb. See, all that land up there was auctioned off. Not that piece of land. That was owned by a different. They resold that land, and Barnhill bought it. But that's where Cliff Harris, the head of bankrupt sale, approximately 6 months ago, a bunch of land in there on both sides of the road. And but I agree with it that this is the best thing for it. But what I don't understand so much, all that we approved that properly already about 3 or 4 years ago, and we talked about coming out on the road, but that's up there farther.
It is right to the south. If you look on the screen,
Right.
the other...
It's right there. It's to the south of that particular property.
It is.
But it all joins that together.
It does.
See, this happened, of course, Barnhill don't know this, but this happened about 2, 3, 4 years ago. But I think it's good for it. I think it's good for the community and so forth. That's about the only thing, and there's nobody living there, so I don't see why anybody would oppose it, really.
Any further questions or comments? If not, we have a motion and a second, so let's vote. Thank you. The next thing is another public hearing on this same piece of property, and this is for a conditional use permit request on this property. Mr. Rhodes.
With your subsequent approval of the rezoning, we can move forward with conditional use permit consideration, again, on the exact same property. As you recall, this is a quasi-judicial process, and any concerns, any appeal would go to Superior Court. And as we typically go through this, this is handled a little bit differently. We're here to establish the facts. Anyone wishing to speak will be placed under oath, and no ex parte communication, written findings of fact. And again, as I've mentioned, any appeal of this decision today would go to Superior Court. So with that, we'll ask the clerk to the board to swear in anyone that wishes to speak.
We have signed up, again, Jonathan Proctor.
The property in question, again, is the same that we just spoke of. It's on the western side of Gum Swamp Church Road near its intersection with Roosevelt Spain. As we've already shown on the screen previously, this is the site in question, approximately 80-some acres. The site plan, remember when we're dealing with a conditional use permit, we have an opportunity to look exactly as to how it is to be developed, any improvements that are to go on here, especially conditions pertinent to the zoning ordinance. This is the property in question, actually two properties together, two parcels here side by side. This is the boundary that we're contending with. There are some smaller lots along the roadway that have been cut out previously, and you can see the jagged edge there. Existing ponds from a previously operating sand mine that's now inactive. And also on site, our staff has been out there and determined that there are some riparian buffers that are necessary along some existing drainage features. So those are also shown. Those areas cannot be disturbed as part of the mining operation. Here is the mining area shown in gray, and as required by the zoning ordinance, there is a 6-foot high berm around the perimeter here. There's some existing vegetation that's also used to screen the area, so it does not actually go completely around. It's kind of a hedgerow in this area that also provides screening. I will note here on this where it comes out to the driveway right on Gum Swamp Church Road, there is shown on the plan 4-foot screening berms. There is a requirement for 6-foot that may be tapered down right at the road just for the view coming out toward the road, but for the most part those will have to be increased to 6 feet for screening purposes. The zoning ordinance does make certain conditions requirements as part of this type of use being placed on the property. A minimum of 100-foot separation from the edge of any sand pit. That's already been shown on the plan. Hours of operation only included when there's blasting. This is a sand mining operation as determined by Barnhill. At this point, there will be no blasting involved. Screening has been shown with some modifications that are required, and a state mining permit must be issued. As with any conditional use permit, we actually have to look at several criteria, and it's from staff's perspective, and there's some additional information in your agenda package. We try to address each one of these criteria. The first one, will it materially endanger the public health or safety? Our comments there, it will be screened and buffered from the adjacent properties, and we don't see there it will cause any issues with public health or safety. And again, there are a lot of requirements that go along with the state mining permit as well. Will it injure the value of adjoining property? We feel like it will not. It's primarily agricultural in nature. There's an adjacent sand mine, so we feel like it is appropriate in that location. Is it in harmony? As I've just mentioned, those types of uses, and especially with the existing mining operation just to the south, we feel like it blends in well. And is it in conformity with the land use plan, thoroughfare plan, and other officially adopted plans by the Board of Commissioners? We believe that it is. So with that today, staff is recommending two motions. One, that we do have a complete application before you for consideration. Secondarily, approving the conditional use permit with the conditions that we've reviewed, and including also that this entranceway berm actually be increased in height to 6 foot. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we're ready for the public hearing.
Okay, I declare the public hearing open. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this request? Come forward, please. State your name and address.
Jonathan Proctor, Barnhill Contracting, 2311 North Main Street, Tarboro, North Carolina. Thank you, Board. First, I'd like to thank you for the approval of the rezoning so that we can move into the request for the conditional use. Just to give you a little bit of an overview for this sand pit, it will be used to supply sand for our asphalt plant that's on Barris Construction Road. It's about 3 miles away. We'll plan to mine about 50 acres of the 87 acres. The other acreage is in the buffers, and then that southern pond that was shown on the map would not be further disturbed. It's pretty much mined out. The sand pit will be used for Barnhill contracting projects only. In general, we won't sell it to the public or to haulers, anything of that nature. Its ultimate use will be to supply sand for our asphalt plant. Just to give you an idea of the use that will be coming from this pit, a good year for us in terms of asphalt production at that plant would require somewhere around 1,500 loads of sand coming from this pit over the course of that year. Typically, we wouldn't have any more than 3 or 4 trucks on that haul cycling. It won't be a mass production, a bunch of trucks in and out all the time. It'll be sporadically used in that nature. We'll haul to the plant, get the stockpile for sand up, and then as we use it in the asphalt, kind of that cycle will go back and forth. As Mr. Rose stated, we have received a driveway permit from the NCDOT. We talked with them right much about where the driveway should be located because of the curves and that nature. And then we will operate this pit in an extremely safe manner. There'll be federal regulations that we have to fall under with the Mine Safety and Health Act, and as well as OSHA. There will also be state and local regulations that are imposed regarding erosion control, the slopes. And then we will also follow our company's safety policy. We have daily and weekly safety meetings, tailgate meetings with our field personnel to make sure everything's going as planned. So we try to keep our well-being as well as the public well-being, health, and in consideration. We don't feel it'll endanger the public in any way. There'll be a lock gate at the entrance, the berms all the way around it, and then we'll have signs up on the perimeter of the property to warn anyone that's entering what's going on. There won't be any structures built on the property for this pit. We don't typically do any washing or screening of our sand. It'll be dug directly out of the ground with an excavator, loaded on the truck, and hauled off. You won't see, typically with these sand pits, you might see these big stockpiles of material where they're separating and washing for mortar sand, concrete sand. All you'll see here is just basically a pond. We'll dig it right out of the ground, load it up, and haul it to the plant. And then lastly, we just want to say that we've been working in this community a good number of years. We want to continue that. We try to be good neighbors. We try to I actually met with about 5 of those residential owners that were right along the road on site, and then I spoke with a couple of more over the phone. I handed those folks site plans, gave them copies, talked with them about our use, and received really positive feedback from them. I didn't get any objections to it. So with that, I want to thank you for hearing our request, and would greatly appreciate it if you would approve it.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in favor of? Anyone like to speak against? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion, second. Any questions or comments?
Yes, I have some questions. All right, James, where's the driveway coming out on the Gunswamp Road on that? You're not up there by those horses, are you? What at? Maybe
There's no horses there, no.
Down farther it is after you come, when Gunswamp Road leaves that road, that's where I'm talking about. You're not going to be there.
It is.
It'll come out right where those things intersect. Between the horses will be to the south.
Do you
To the south. How far are you from? Well, all right now. That road, of course, doesn't have a base. very much of a base. You know that those heavy trucks are going to tear it up. Of course, I know you know that. You're in that business. All right. Who's going to fix it, or you're going to make sure that it will hold up these loads? Because you're going to be there for a long time, because that's a lot of land.
That's what we've been in conversation with DOT with. And
Jonathan, if you'll step up.
I just want to make sure that those people there are protected.
Yes, sir.
That road.
Yes, that's what we were in contact with DOT with, and we talked about the truck count, how much in general we would be using it. The DOT, I believe his name is Woody Jarvis with the maintenance, did not have any, after talking with him and talking about our use, did not require anything of us as far as protecting the road or anything of that nature. He didn't foresee the damage being done anymore with the other sand pit that's on the road, that's already in operation. There's some logging that's been done, that sort of thing. He didn't see any additional requirements that we would need to meet.
All right, the thing that James said that I was concerned with, mining. All right, James, you said there were no plans to use dynamite or anything like that now, but how about the future? Because that's what...
There won't be any.
There won't be any,
no,
okay.
sir.
I have no complaints then.
Any further questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Webb.
How long will the mine be open, roughly?
During the day or
No,
for the
in
duration?
general, the life of the mine.
It really depends on the activity. So he's got about 50 acres he can mine, and he'll have to probably tell you what that equates to based on the amount of activity per day. Jonathan?
Just a rough estimation years.
I'd say 15, 20 years.
And will there be a similar reclamation after it's closed that we've seen north of the river with the ponds and things?
Yes,
okay.
we'll have to do all that through the state miner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, I don't know that this directly affects the request, but how far down do you have to go before you get to rock?
We did not do any drilling. I don't know, because once we go down to a restrictive layer, which on this property was somewhere around 18 to 20 feet, we get to a heavy layer of clay. That's all we're interested in using it for. We didn't drill. I don't.
In other words, you stop at the clay level.
Yes, sir. It'll be we call it gumbo. It's just a restrictive blue clay that's not good for anything, really.
He's not going to hit rock, but you know there's 6 school buses that go along that road.
Yes, sir. And we talked with Mr. Parrish. Mr. Parrish, I think's his name, that lives there. He has some concerns on where
he lives down on the corner
entrance in the curve, and we told him we were going to move it. That entrance will be to the where the intersection of Roosevelt Spain comes from, which is further up the road from where the original driveway was.
He is the one that I talked to some time ago.
Yes, sir.
You got involved.
Yes, sir.
That's the reason I'm asking these questions too, because I know all of this.
Yeah, he was one of the owners that I met with on site, and we walked around and talked about it. And so that was his main concern when I talked with him.
It is. All of them are concerned about that, where that driveway is going to be coming out because of these trucks. And you all are not going to spray water on it probably. And if you don't, you're going to have a lot of dust and stuff like that.
Well, we'll have to keep water on the Hall Road coming out. That'll be a requirement of the state mining permit to keep dust down. Yes, sir.
And just for my information, I was talking about this graveyard. I'm kind of surprised that y'all are not familiar with it. It's right there at the curve. The wooded area. It's not a big one. It's very small. But you didn't get all that whole block of land there, did you?
What was shown on that map is all we bought during that auction.
James, you know who owned? No, I won't go that way.
Mr. James, I'm not familiar with a grave site on this property.
Well, it's on the same field.
Okay.
I guarantee you. I'll meet you out there and show it to you.
Well, if it's in the wooded area, there's
It's not
one
in the
wooded
wooded
area
area.
right here,
It's
and
right on
that
the curve.
that area is not being disturbed at all. You can see right here on the site plan, the trees will remain. The existing pond, they're not even going across the
Oh, yeah,
ditch to
that's-
get there.
That's to the north of this.
Right.
Okay.
I understood him to say that it was 87 acres entirely, but they were going to mine 50 acres of it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes, if I understand it correctly, the clay will ensure that the residue will be a lake forever. Is that not correct?
That's typically when we dig down to that layer, it will keep the water that's in there. A lot of times, if you leave sand, it'll have a tendency to hold it. But what's out there now has plenty of water in it. Both of the ponds that are out there, and then the pit that's immediately to the south on that property also has water in it. I don't see where it would be an issue of not keeping any water.
Thank you. You've heard the discussion. Do I have a motion?
I so moved, Mr. Chairman.
Do you already have a motion?
And a second.
Okay.
Yeah,
And a
yeah,
second.
that's
Very
right.
good.
We've
Let's
already
vote.
done that.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next thing on our agenda is a presentation, a resolution of appreciation for Mrs. Kimberly B. Hardy, and we would like to ask you to come forward.
Do we have to approve? I don't know.
Can I have a motion to approve?
I
this?
so moved.
Second.
Wait for me, Mr. Vice Chairman.
This morning we have a resolution to honor Kimberly Hardy and please. Resolution honoring Kimberly B. Hardy, Deputy Register of Deeds, upon receiving certification by the North Carolina Association of Register of Deeds. Whereas Kimberly Hardy deserves to congratulate the Pitt County Board of Commissioners of her accomplishment of receiving her certification by the North Carolina Association of Register of Deeds. And whereas Kimberly Hardy has diligently pursued the advancement of her certification in all areas of the Deputy Register of Deeds. And whereas Kimberly Hardy has given her own personal time to prepare for an in-depth examinations necessary to achieve certification in this area. And whereas Kimberly Hardy, by her recent attainment of certification in all Register of Deeds areas, has joined an elite group of registrars who have been certified at this advanced level. Now therefore be resolved that the Pitt County Board of Commissioners honors and recognizes the achievement of Kimberly B. Hardy for the attainment of the advanced level of certification in all areas as a Deputy Register of Deeds, adopted this 14th day of January 2013, signed by Chairman Jimmy Garris, and tested by Clerk Kimberly W. Pines.
Congratulations. We appreciate it very much. We're always pleased and excited when our employees decide to further advance their education, because when you do that, you're a greater contribution to the county. And we appreciate that very much. Congratulations.
Jimmy, let me say something.
I recognize Vice Chairman Owens.
Deborah, just a moment, if you will.
We're going to take it back.
This board approved December the 31st as a holiday for the Pitt County employees. After some input from the various and different people that were closing out business transactions for the end of the year, December the 31st, Deborah and her staff came and worked that day when everybody else had a holiday. And on behalf of the people, I want to thank you and your staff, Deborah.
Very
Thank you.
We're going to get our holiday, but you're welcome.
You helped a lot. You helped a lot of people.
Yes, we did. We made about $9,000 that day.
That's good. Better work every day than that.
Very good. Thank you. We now will have our public addresses to the board, and I believe we have
Two people signed up?
two people signed up, Holly Garrett and Mr. Strickland.
My name's Holly Garrett, and I'm the Executive Director of the Pitt County Arts Council. Barbara Strickland is our President-elect of the Arts Council next year, or next year will be the President. And I just wanted to give you an update on the Pitt County Arts Council, what we're doing, and also let you know about the Civic Arts Committee, which is a subcommittee, and that is within a resolution on the items for consent later on today. So I just wanted to give you an update. In 2009, the County Commissioners actually approved the designation of the Pitt County Arts Council at a merge. As your local arts council, we are dedicated to enhancing the quality of life in Pitt County by promoting artists and arts organizations, educating through the arts, and making the arts accessible to the entire community. In the last 4 years, we have worked with our countywide arts organizations to find out what their needs are through community meetings and surveys. We have conducted a cultural arts strategic plan for the entire county, and we have implemented an extensive study on the economic impact of the arts in Pitt County. And this actually showed us that in Pitt County, the arts create 462 jobs and over $9 million in direct investment. We have also just created a new online arts and cultural calendar for the entire community, and you can go to our website, pittcountyarts.org, and basically see any arts and cultural events that are going on any day of the week. The Civic Arts Committee is a subcommittee of the Arts Council. The work of this committee is a countywide collaboration demonstrating that we are a community rich in culture, arts, and creativity. And we hope you will support and endorse this committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will address that in our consent agenda on page 59. I think, let's see, we have one other person, Mike Dorian.
Yes.
Sorry, don't need it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We now have our items for report. The first one is our manager's report. Mr. Elliott.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. First item is the next meeting dates. In the month of February, you'll go back to a regular meeting schedule with two meetings, February 4th and February 18th at 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. respectfully. Item B is to remind the board of the group photo on the second meeting in February on the 18th at 5 o'clock before your 6 o'clock meeting. Item C is just to announce to the board that the planning department is going to be seeking urgent repair funding, submitting an application for these state funds. I believe it's $75,000 for a single county that can be used for housing rehabilitation. Item D and E, in talking to Suzanne Sertel with the Pitt County Greenville Chamber of Commerce, when we announced that today they are having their annual economic forecast luncheon. That will be at 12 noon at the City Hotel and Bistro. And then a week from today, on Monday the 21st, will be the annual Community Unity Breakfast at the Murphy Center. That will be at 7:30 in the morning. Other than that, I had two other items. They're not on the printed agenda, but wanted to announce that in response to the last board meeting that myself and staff have been working on the appointment policy in terms of reviewing any needed revisions to it. We'll be bringing that back for the board's consideration in the month of February. Also wanted to announce in regards to appointments, and we'll start adding this to the manager's report, in terms of the various boards that we are recruiting for. Right now we are actively recruiting for 7 different boards. So I announce this for the Board of Commissioners and the public that if anybody knows anybody who might be interested in submitting an application to serve on these boards, we'd encourage them to do that. And they can do that by contacting the clerk's office. They can go online to the county's website at www.pittcountync.gov and click on the Board of Commissioners, click to the board link on there and get an application. But the 7 boards that we're currently recruiting for is the Region Q Workforce Development Board, the Agricultural Advisory Board, the Aid and Planning Board in terms of an ETJ membership, the Pitt County Board of Health, Pitt County Animal Control Advisory Board, the Board of Equalization and Review, and then as the Mideast Commission that we are a member of as part of Region Q. One that we will be advertising for next month, another important one, is the Vidant Medical Center Board, and that will be coming back to the board's consideration. There's one vacancy that will be considered, two reappointments and one vacancy that we are in need of applicants, so the board will have a full array of folks to consider for, not only for that one, but the other 7 as well. And other than that, said one other item. Tonight at 7 o'clock, there is going to be a daycare meeting regarding the daycare slots and the state funding that the Department of Social Services has been dealing with cuts at the Philippi Church. This will be at 7 o'clock again, and this is actually a second meeting. This is a follow-up to a meeting that was held a couple weeks ago. Myself and staff, George Perry, will be there. I think folks from the state level have been invited to attend to try to help explain why the daycare funding and the slots are being reduced. Also explain the 5-star system, the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and how that relates and correlates to the issue of daycare funding. And with that, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. We appreciate you giving us that update on the boards that we will be seeking applicants for. Those boards and committees that serve the county are very important, and I encourage you, along with the rest of our board, if you're interested in any of those, please fill out an application. It's important work that they do. The next thing for our report will be Dr. Emery from Pitt County Schools. She comes and periodically updates us on the good things going on in our school system. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Good morning and Happy New Year to you. We have enjoyed coming quarterly and sharing updates with you. And a year ago, Michael Cowan and I came and we talked to you at that point before you got into your budget planning about low wealth. And many of you even thanked us for talking to you about the connectivity between the low wealth dollars that our school system receives and the local operating dollars that you have so generously given over the years. And we really appreciated last year the spirit of partnership as we managed some difficult times. At that point, it was our suggestion that our reduction come from the dollars you have given us since the early 90s for capital improvements. So as you know, we went from that $750,000 capital allotment to zero to help us manage the operating reductions that we needed to take as partners with you in funding. And so I'm here today to just say, as we see other departments around the county beginning your budgeting thought process early, to do the same as an advocate for our school system. As you know, during these difficult times, you may have seen in other county school systems repeatedly go back to commissioners every time a boiler needs to be replaced or there's a roof issue. And we are proud to say that this partnership that we've had in terms of putting aside those capital dollars since the early 90s has prevented us from doing that. In fact, my staff, when we met, we can't recall a time mid-year outside of a budget cycle that we have had to come before you and ask for any emergency funding for capital needs. And we believe that is a good representation of the planning and partnership we've had for many years. And so we appreciate your willingness to be creative with us last year, but we are asking you to consider that a one-time fix for budget issues. And our reasoning is as follows. Of our 37 facilities, we paint only 3 to 4 every 8 years on a painting cycle. We routinely address roofing priorities annually based on funds and needs. And if we did that as we should, those 2 areas alone, painting and roofing, would take the entire allotment that we receive from the county. When those dollars don't come to us, we go into our fund balance. And we know there are mixed feelings about fund balance, but we believe the fund balance is the reason that we don't come back to you. We've purposely created one so when we need the boilers and the roofs and those emergencies, we have a fund to draw on. And that's where we have drawn with it. Without it being funded, we have drawn from that balance. But you know I could take your entire meeting talking about our needs. Right now we're looking at $5 million need for $5 million in window replacements. We have more than 20 activity buses that are more than 20 years old, and if we replaced them, they would be replaced at a cost of $81,000 apiece. We have two school structures that you know well, a 1929 and a 1936 structure that were in our long-range facilities plan that sit in a holding pattern for new construction or renovation because of current budget restraints. And despite the fact that we have plans to renovate, those schools still have issues, maintenance issues, roof issues, floor issues that we can't neglect because we still serve children there. And then most recently, we appreciate your concern and your oversight in looking at school safety in light of Sandy Hook and the tragedy there. We are currently reevaluating safety issues in our system. We are working with an expert we are blessed to have in our community from ECU in threat assessment and looking again at how do we continue to provide the safest school environments possible. And you all know that that's not one size fits all. It's not a knee-jerk reaction to run out and put a buzzer at every school door or a camera. We need to look at all of our facilities. Some of those are locking inner doors. Some of those are buzzers and cameras. Right now we're looking at about a $350,000 preliminary assessment of what we may need to take our schools to a higher level of safety. And when we ask ourselves, how will we do that? Well, we may look at borrowing from ourselves from the $400,000 that we've set aside to continue to get Pitt County schools closer to the mandatory online assessment that comes our way in the 2014-15 school year. And what does that mean? We've been on a journey to spend about $3 million in technology because in that school year, every child will take their assessment for the state via a computer. Must be mandatory. And again, not a lot of dollars from the state to help us accomplish that. So right now we're looking at, well, do we need to put that purchase this spring on hold until we finish our safety evaluation and assessment, because we may this year need to spend that set aside on safety features in our schools in order to improve safety in all of our facilities. So the same kinds of issues you're dealing with, we are dealing with as well in looking at capital needs. We do also want to remind you that our last round of new construction and additions were done with no increase in operations from this board, again due to difficult economic times. And while in the past you have always graciously had an increased operation formula when we open a new facility, we work together to absorb those costs as good partners. So again, we just wanted to take this opportunity to make you aware of our needs and concerns, and as you begin to hear from other departments and begin the budget season, we just ask you to look at any way possible that you can restore funding to us for those capital needs. We also want to recognize to you the fine work of our teachers and staff. We shared with you early in the year that every single content area this year has new standards, and so our teachers all have basically been revising lessons, assessments to meet and be aligned to those new standards, and it has been tremendous work for them, and they have done a wonderful job. I visit schools every Friday morning. It's a part of my routine, and I never leave a school disappointed. I'm always impressed by the work that's going on in our classrooms. And then finally, I do want to say we are incredibly proud of the news last week from DPI that in the last 4 years we have reduced our dropout rate by 49.6. If you look at it over the 08-09 school year, which is some 20 points better reduction than the state, and we have to admit we had we had more work to do than the state average. But we believe that many of the strategies that we've put in place and that you have supported and been strong advocates for are really having an impact on dropout prevention in our county. So I do want to thank all of those in our district, particularly at middle and high school, who have worked so hard to help us implement the many strategies that we put in place to see that. Our goal was to reduce our dropout rate by 50% in 5 years, and we're rounding up at 49.6 and saying we've met that goal in 4 years. And we feel really good about the number of kids that are staying in school and graduating on time. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll
thank you. Any questions?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to serve as liaison from this Board of County Commissioners to the school board, and I observe with interest the work of our dedicated school board and Dr. Embry and her staff in carrying out their duties and responsibilities. It indeed does take working together, and this board makes every effort to keep in mind the needs of the children of the county in the decisions that we make. As you know, we are having considerable difficulty with finding enough money to go around for the needs of this county, and we will continue to do the very best that we can. I have expressed to our county manager, Scott Elliott, my appreciation for his hard work in putting together budgets. It has been extremely difficult for him to put together budgets that this board can endorse and approve, and he knows that this next budget year will be at least as difficult as the last, and we as you must pay considerable attention to what the General Assembly does and what the folks in Washington do. I was trying my best to be optimistic in proposing to one of our well-informed citizens that, quite frankly, I really don't believe that a majority of the members of the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House really knew what they were approving in their last round. I don't think they knew, and I think the facts are coming out little bit by bit. And the problem is that our Pitt County schools have to stay tuned to what's happening and adjust as you can to what's happening on the national and state level. And I will represent this board later this month in Raleigh in considering the legislative agenda for this next year, and I'll do my very best to indicate the needs of the public schools, and we all need to support what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner James?
Yes, I have several questions. All right, how much money do you have in your fund balance?
I'll let Mr. Cowan give you that.
Yeah, I need him up here. He's the man that I want to be talking to right much.
We have approximately $3 million in the fund balance.
All right. You know, this board has to work with your board for money. I want to know why you're putting new bleachers in these schools, and how much money is that costing us?
Aaron would be better to speak to that, but it's
All right,
more of a security issue.
This is where I'm getting. I've got more than this too, but come on up, because I know they don't give you those bleachers, and I know I go and sit on them, and I can't believe it. And if you need money, go ahead and answer that one first.
We're spending $340,000 approximately to replace the gym bleachers at both Aidan-Grifton High School and Farmville Central High School as part of an overall plan and deferred maintenance to address our bleacher needs across the district.
How about North Pitt?
Those were done in a previous budget cycle.
But why did you do it if you need money so bad? That's what I'm getting at.
Because a lot of our bleachers do not meet code. A lot of those bleachers have been in there since original construction. We commonly use our gyms.
Well, I know that. I go and set that stuff. They were pretty good. Better than I ever had when I was going to school. But more important than that, just if you will, all of this, these desks, chairs, just like new ones. The reason I'm saying that, we have a sale at Belvoir School, Belvoir Fire Department. We have hundreds, thousands really of them that's being sold for $1 a piece. But if you need money so bad for capital, why aren't you using those chairs and desks? Why you got a warehouse over yonder full of them?
Well, Mr. James, we go through an extensive process in identifying things that have issues or concerns or don't meet a criteria or pose a safety hazard. And I'm not arguing with you.
Well, I'm not arguing. I'm just saying.
We're just saying before something gets to the point where it's auctioned off, it has gone through a fairly extensive checklist of particularly safety criteria for us in classrooms. We move stuff all over this district from one place to another, whether we're shifting kids or whether enrollment is higher in one school than another. I would tell you the bleacher issue is primarily a safety issue, and we're dealing with a suit right now where somebody had an accident on a bleacher, and that costs us money too. So I think we have to look at, are we better off to look at getting rid of our liabilities?
Please don't talk about
it. And Mr. James, I'd also say that one case where we had a person fall and was injured on the bleachers is going to cost us probably $100,000. And I'd also like to say that those desks and chairs that we do reuse within our schools, we have opened 5 schools in the last 10 years where we haven't asked for one dime from the county commissioners to furnish and equip our schools. So we have used our dollars efficiently in order to put those supplies and equipment in our schools without having to ask the county commissioners for them.
The only thing I know is that the firemen at the Belvoir sale work 2-3 days hauling stuff out there, and it takes them hours to sell it. All right, the next thing that I'm very much concerned about, all right, Pitt County, up until about 2 or 3 years ago, you were requiring 28 units. When I was in high school, it was 16. Then it went to 18. Now the state says 21 units. But you say, and I know you've come down, and I appreciate it so much. But you say that now, how many units do you require? And this is the way you prevent dropouts. If they want to have 28 units, they can take them. But don't require more than the state requires to graduate. How many units do you require now?
The requirement is still the same, 28, except for the 21 unit for students who meet a certain requirement, Mr. James. And that has been discussed and debated at policy level with our board. And I think there is a real reluctance for 2 reasons. One, we have dramatically lowered our dropout rate and dramatically increased our graduation rate without lowering our expectations. And 2, if we go to 21, we do eliminate many of the required electives in career and technical education, which people believe are strong reasons for keeping our kids in school. They're getting credentialed, they're getting licensed so that when they graduate and leave us, they can go into the workforce. So those have been, this is not a done deal. It's still being discussed, but I think the fact that you haven't seen major policy revision is as people look at that and they look at the data and we actually analyze. We pull random student schedules and look at what they're doing with those 28 courses to draw conclusions that tell us, are we really going to help ourselves by going to 21, or are we really going to serve kids who are getting a lot out of those required elective courses?
You know, I taught school for 35 years.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
And I know when they're there and they're taking these courses that they don't really need their trouble. And they could be out working. We wouldn't have to be hiring teachers. We wouldn't have to be building all these buildings if we gave them 21 units instead of 28. Common sense tells me that. Ray and I got a little bit of it. But that, the next thing, and I've always been on this, is the trades courses that you're having. That's how we're going to keep a lot of our students in school, because they're not going to college. God didn't create us all the same.
And that's the point I want you to draw back to those 28 credits. And I know we're never going to agree.
No,
and
we're not.
I very much appreciate and respect your experience and what you're saying, because I know it comes from a heart for kids. But if we go to 21 credits, those are math, science, English, social studies, and they're out. And the very courses you're talking about, which really do help some kids stay in school, are not a part of that 28, are not a part of the 21 credit requirement. And that is why we continue with our Board of Education to have such healthy debate about changing it, because they do agree with you, and we all do, that we have kids who tremendously benefit. Now, having to take so many maths or Englishes may not help all of those kids who are not college bound, but we don't get the say about which 21 credits kids have to graduate.
All right, I have two more comments. All right, one of them is 21 units. That doesn't mean that they just take 20. They can take 28 if they want to, or they can take 25, or they can take 21, because you have a big percentage of students in Pitt County schools will never go to college. And you know it and I know it. And we need to work with those. They need to graduate. We need to break the cycle that we are in, because it's at home is where most of it is. I know, and you know that too, of course. And I can't believe that anybody that works with kids think that they're going to educate these. A lot of them are going to want to get out and work. Do you have a program here in Pitt County now that you let them get out at lunch and go to work in the afternoon at a job?
Seniors, if they've met the requirements, seniors can leave early for work. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know they did that even when I was in school. All right, that's all I have to say, but I know one thing. The boards have got to work together. Not only has Pitt County these commissioners got to work to find money, but the Board of Education has got to work to be able to save money. And that's where I was coming from pertaining to the seats and the chairs and tables and so forth. And we got to do it. I'm not interested in putting my money to take and to put out there and put. I can fall on these new seats just as much as the old ones. There's no insurance that you're not going to fall. And you know it, so don't tell me that. I'm not that crazy. Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Okay, Commissioner Hammond.
Dr. Emery, has the unitary status issue been completely and finally settled?
No, Mr. Hammond. We were supposed to be in court in December, and the plaintiffs asked for an extension. Judge Howard granted that extension for them to do further discovery, and we anticipate March or April. That doesn't mean we'll have a decision from the judge, but we are looking now at a March or April court date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations on the dropout rate reduction. We appreciate that. All the hard work for the teachers and the board and you as well. And I just want to speak to the safety issue real quick, and I appreciate you guys being proactive in that, because that's something that's near and dear to my heart. Of course, every parent's heart is the safety of the students. But the after-action reports I've seen from Sandy Hook show that that school was actually a pretty hard target. It was fortified. It had the doors that were necessary, and the one element that could have changed everything was a school resource officer, trained personnel that could have, for lack of a better term, put rounds on target. And is that being considered for our schools, especially our more remote schools, where, in the city, response times are going to be around 2 minutes, which is a very long time if you're being shot at. But in the county, it's going to be even longer because personnel issues spread thin, remote area, you get caught up on one thing, you're talking 15, 20 minutes, which is an eternity. Is this being considered 4 hours, if you can speak to that?
Well, I am very hopeful this week when the Vice President releases his, I think, is that tomorrow that we're supposed to hear, and I don't mean hopeful in terms of that somebody's going to write me a check tomorrow, but I'm hopeful if the federal government's assessment is that we need trained law enforcement folks in every school, that there will come some effort to help us fund that. I don't want to get political or make anybody mad, but as a person who spent 34 years in this business, I am really not a proponent of arming anyone who comes to work for me just because they have a permit. I think there's way more that goes with it. I'm very much in favor of every school having trained law enforcement because it's more than just knowing how to shoot a gun. It's understanding, as you well know, who are perpetrators and how they think and all those things that come with all the training that goes into law enforcement. So we would very much like to move in that direction, and certainly part of this discussion will be how do we do that. I would rather have SROs and make reductions in other places than be forced by the legislature to arm custodians. I just have a real fear about that, but I do believe, as you say, there is a lot of wisdom in what we're seeing from the NRA and from all these groups that are experts that we need that presence. And we have a meeting next week with Sheriff Elks and our new police chief to sort of get some feedback from them after we've had a chance to do an initial assessment here. But I do believe you're going to be hearing a lot more.
I just want to make sure that was an option because we talked about the buzz doors and things, but that was there. And
yes,
it obviously, nothing's impermeable. And like you said, I want trained people there that can recognize activity before they even get to the door, that are doing routine patrols. Because if it happens, if someone inside the building has to defend everybody, it's almost too late anyhow. So I'm glad that's part of the discussion. I wouldn't trust a well-rounded response out of Washington. It doesn't always happen that way. The two sides like to fight more than they like to do, it seems. But I'm glad that we're considering it, and we're considering.
Well, we have to be hopeful that from this tragedy, some good for all of us will come from that, and I'm very hopeful that even if it's the very amazing move of that community to say we have enough, if you want to make contributions, give it to local children's charities, that maybe that would be an impetus for some nationwide effort to try to be sure our schools have well-trained law enforcement.
I just want to make sure that we're going to act no matter what Raleigh or Washington does.
Well, and we, if I had the money, I'd do it today. I mean, I don't want you to think there's any philosophical question about that. There absolutely isn't.
I don't believe that at all.
And so if we can find a way to do that, absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Ember, first of all, I personally would like to extend our deepest sympathy in the loss of one of the finest coach in this county, Coach Ed Emery, your father-in-law. Also, I'm certainly concerned that having worked in law enforcement for 32 years, I see the sensitive need of security as been mentioned here. While I know that some of the issues are very sensitive in terms of talking in depth, revealing to the public as to what we may be doing, I did hear you make a remark in terms of utilization of East Carolina University in helping with this issue. And I think that's a plus that you're achieving. Having said that, there is, I think, a very strong correlation in bullying in terms of school violence. I want to know, what are we doing, and I brought this up before, what are we doing that we are dealing with this, I think, terrible issue of bullying? I mean, what are we doing?
Well, and I think that's sort of the other piece of this that doesn't get talked about a lot, which is the mental health component. Bullying isn't always, I'm not saying everybody who's bullied or bullies has a mental health issue, but that is how do we address, prevent, and help children understand they need to talk to somebody about it. I would tell you that we have done extensive work in our schools, training with staff, with counselors, with children. We communicate regularly with parents about letting us know, and I probably sound like a broken record to you, but so many of the situations that we find out about after the fact, we don't learn about in school. And probably if there was one key thing we could communicate to parents and families in our communities, and that is we can't deal with what we don't know about. And we've got to have folks come talk to us. And at certain ages, that's tricky. You know, kids, if you're being bullied, you may not want to go talk to somebody because you may feel that makes the bullying worse. But we have to know in order to be able to deal with it. Our board has revised the policy. You know, the legislature has, in fact, mandated certain components to bullying policies for schools. So there really are some strong opportunities for us to send a message to kids that we won't tolerate it. But we do have it. I mean, it happens. And you know, I think one of the saddest things for me in this is that it's almost, to me, a part of a culture that we see, not just in our schools, but in society, that, you know, things need to happen, they need to happen immediately, and they need to be my way, or else I'm going to sort of take it into my own hands to deal with it. And that's a scary thing for little kids. But we see it as little as kindergarten. And to me, a kindergartner, a 5 or 6 year old who comes to school and knows how to do some of the things our kids do, it's happening to them somewhere, or they wouldn't have the skills to do it at 5. So yes, we take it very seriously, and we have a lot of training going on, particularly with counselors, administrators, and social workers, who are the folks that really try to intervene on the mental health side of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also sit on the board of East Carolina Behavioral Health, and I'm pleased that at least at this point that the Biden committee is seriously considering what needs to be done in terms of diagnosing and treating the mentally ill. We don't have any more, I don't believe, mentally ill people in schools than in the general public. But it behooves us to do everything we can to provide assistance to individuals who need psychological help. And if we can have as one part of that report diagnosing and treating the mentally ill, then I believe that will help us tremendously. And that part that's being considered by the Biden committee is important to me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Dr. Emery, we do have resource officers at some schools.
Yes, all of our high schools and our 6 through 8 middle schools.
So we have 37 schools?
Yes, well, we have 37 facilities. 36th, Sadie is our 37th facility.
Okay.
All 6 high schools, our larger high schools, all have 2 resource officers each. All of our resource officers are assigned to a school, so if something goes on, the school knows to make that call. You know, if you're in the Farmville community, good for you, because it's easy for that SRO generally to get from Farmville Middle or Farmville Central to Bundy or Sugg. But in these outer areas, you know, they try first and then they call whatever local law enforcement. And, you know, we're blessed in this community also to have great relationships with law enforcement, and I think they want to help us in every way they can too. But we're all up against the economic reality of this, and I don't want to be the person standing up in front of my community when there's a tragedy saying, well, we just didn't have enough money. So we really got to focus on that in the months ahead.
Okay. I'd like to thank you very much for coming before us this morning. And again, I would like to thank you for the cooperative spirit that you and your staff has had towards us in these very difficult economic times. I am sure we will be challenged again this year, but we will work together and we will find the best solutions we can to meet the county needs and the school needs. But thank you very much for your cooperation.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming before us this morning. Okay, the next item on our agenda is another item for report. Mrs. Booker will give us our December tax collections report.
Good morning. The Pitt County fiscal year to date, which is July through December, combined collection rate for taxes on real and personal property and motor vehicles is 77.08. And this is a decrease of 3.39 as compared with the rate 1 year ago of 80.47. Collections during the month of January 2013 and thereafter, especially January's month, should bring the combined collection rate in line with the previous years in the previous comparisons of the months. We've had a tremendous amount of activity and payments come in the early part of January that we believe when we run these reports at the end of the month, they will be back more in line.
Okay, any questions? Do I have a motion that we approve the report?
Second.
Okay, motion second. Let's vote.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda is our monthly financial report, and Mr. Holder will present that to us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Your December 31st monthly financial report, which represents 50% of the fiscal year. You'll see that our overall revenues year to date are tracking at 58.1% of budget collected. Expenditures are 49.3% of our anticipated expenditures spent. In comparison to the prior year, we're 0.3% behind in our revenue collection against budget, but we're also a 0.1% less expended against budget. So again, these are good. This is a good indicator for how we are progressing through this fiscal year in this new kind of flatline budget that the commissioners adopted for the current fiscal year. So as we compare where we are this year as compared to last year, remember last year we ended our negative trend of fund balance. So it looks like if we can continue throughout the remainder of the fiscal year as we have halfway through, we'll be in line to have another good positive addition to fund balance in this year. Any questions?
Very good. Any questions? Do I have a motion we accept the report?
So moved.
Second.
Let's vote. Thank you, Mr. Holder.
Thank you.
Our next item for report is the 2012 revaluation recap, and Mrs. Booker is going to present that.
Hello again. The first thing that I would like to start with is why appraise at market value, and true value equals the market value. You have two statutes there that we follow strictly. The first one is 105-283, appraisal of real and personal property shall be appraised at its true value in money. and that is market value, and Statute 105-284, which establishes a uniform assessment standard. And it also says all property, real and personal, shall be assessed at taxation at its true value, and taxes levied by all counties and municipalities shall be levied uniformly on assessments. We follow early on in close contact with the Department of Revenue. We submit to them early on in the last year prior to the revow our schedule and our process to be followed for that last year in studying our sales and looking at ratios. And we stay in constant contact with them throughout the process and through the appeals process. And if we have questionable properties, we will discuss those with them to assure that we are on the right track. The next slide is how is the value determined, and you have three of the most important up there that derives at our true market value, but the value of the real property shall be determined each reappraisal year as of January 1 of that year. And we utilize comparable property sales files, sales questionnaires, multiple listing services, revenue stamps, cost books, and ratio studies conducted not only in-house, but conducted by the North Carolina Department of Revenue in determining market value based on these sales. And larger home values dropped due to the economy, and they were evident in these sales that we studied and that DOR studied. And it was just not Pitt County that the larger home sales price dropped. That was a common factor across the state. Our revaluation goal is to reach 100% of market value in a revaluation year by utilizing these qualified sales and following the North Carolina General Statute revaluation standards. Revaluing allows the property owners to pay their fair share of the tax burden based on the true market value of the property owned, again based on our sales. Why do property values change? We have approximately 73,000 parcels and approximately 870 neighborhoods. And the appraised value of these properties may increase, they may decrease, or stay the same depending upon the economic changes that have occurred since the previous revaluation. Comparing the old values from 2004 and 2008 values to the new values, the 2012 values as of January 1, that has no bearing on a revaluation as we look at qualified sales to determine the market value as following the North Carolina General Statutes. In order to know the new value, all real property owners were mailed a revaluation notice in February, and the new tax values are effective January 1, 2012. You have an example of the notice that was sent out, and there was extremely important information on the back of that, and it was provided on the back of the form as well as the front of the form to aid that taxpayer in appealing their property, and staff assisted each and every one of those that so wished for us to help them complete their form and turn it in timely. When is this change reflected on tax bills? The tax bills were mailed out with the new assessed values in July. The bills reflecting the new values were due in September. In January 8, 2013, payment of these bills became delinquent. And the revaluation notices were mailed in February. There are three levels of appeal. The first is the informal hearing, and the second is the Pitt County Board of Equalization and Review, and the third is the North Carolina Property Tax Commission. And we follow strictly what they tell us in the statutes in performing our informal appeals. And once the Board of Equalization and Review starts, then we are not allowed to make any more adjustments. And the property owner has a meeting with a DOR certified Pitt County real property appraiser during the informal process, and this is when we can make changes. North Carolina statute places the burden of proof on the property owner to show the assessment is incorrect. And as I stated before, we assist all people who need our assistance in filling out the form so that they file timely for an informal. And those that we do not reach a consensus on, they will go to the Board of Equalization and Review. 2002 informal appeals were received and processed in a timely manner for the 2012 revaluation. There were approximately 3,000 informal appeals in the 2008 revaluation. So there was less in this past year than there were in the prior revaluation. As far as the Pitt County Board of Equalization and Review hearings, there was 45 of those 2002 informal appeals that they heard. And again, once they begin, the assessor may not change the appraisal. And they begin in April. And the third level is the Property Tax Commission. The Property Tax Commission is authorized to hear appeals from listing and appraisal decisions of county boards of commissioners and boards of equalization and review. Unacceptable reasons for appeal: the property owner considers the percentage increase or decrease from the previous valuation too much, or the property owner cannot afford to pay the taxes applied to the assessed value. Any questions we had concerning a particular property or neighborhood, we discussed with the Department of Revenue to ensure our valuations were in the acceptable range. Pitt County Tax Administration role: communication. Inform citizens of the revaluation process through public meetings and news media, and we conducted very many of these. Conduct a fair and impartial revaluation of property, and we do this by following thoroughly the North Carolina general statutes and keeping in touch with the Department of Revenue during the whole process. Accept and investigate appeals accurately and in a timely manner. And real property appraisers performed on-site reviews for every single person who chose or requested help in assisting to file an appeal. And they do those site visits, and they will go out and review their work if there is an appeal. The next slide shows you the sales to assessed value ratios. The bold 2004 and 8 were the prior year ratios. These are conducted by the Department of Revenue, and at 2012 we were at 99.86. A coefficient of dispersion is a measure, and it's the most widely used measure of uniformity in the ratio studies, and the coefficient of dispersion provides a measure of appraisal uniformity. Low CODs, which are considered 15 or less, tend to be associated with a good appraisal uniformity. And Pitt County's coefficient of dispersion, based on 2011 sales, was 8.73. It is very rare for anything to ever fall below a 5. The Pitt County 2012 revaluation meets and exceeds the North Carolina Department of Revenue revaluation standards. 2013 appeals. All taxpayers have the right to appeal their property value every January if they so desire. A taxpayer must complete the informal appeal form and attach the proper documentation for their appeal to be received. And again, we do assist them along the process in any questions that they may have. Forms are available in tax administration and on the website, and we do assist anyone wishing to appeal. Thank you.
Any questions?
The hospital, I asked this question to the manager. He always says they pay it all. Could you give me the partial that the hospital pays the county of Pitt county taxes?
The hospital does not pay through the tax department. The hospital pays their payment in lieu of taxes directly to the finance department, as well as they pay a Medicaid amount, and then they
All
pay.
right, that does bring me some questions then. All right, how many partials does the hospital, how many have they bought? I know they bought everything there is over there, and they make $112 million, so don't tell me they ain't got plenty of money.
When Dr. Herman appeared at the last board meeting, he went over the specifics of the transfer agreement and compliance report.
I know.
I mean, I don't have that off the top of my head.
You'll find that out for me.
Right, we can get you that to you. The compliance report shows the base amount that they're required to pay per the 1998 transfer agreement, and then any property they buy or purchase beyond that, they then have to pay the taxes on it, as well as what they're paying in the payment in lieu of taxes.
That's correct, and that's what I want to know.
Sure.
Okay. Any further questions? Thank you very much. No action required on that.
That's a large amount of money.
Mr. Chairman, I think we're at there, aren't we?
Yes.
For approval of items for consent.
Have a second?
Mr. Chairman, can we make a note on item number 7? Part of my recommendation was left off on the printed package, but you have a complete copy in front of you. Basically, on this item, it's the request to apply for the Governor's Crime Commission by the Sheriff's Department. I did say in my comments that I concur in a cautious, limited manner, just by the fact that this was an expansion of the budget, even though it is majority grant funded. There's a $60,000 match, but that I could go ahead and apply now, defer whether you're going to include this in the budget at that point in time in the springtime.
Yes. Okay. Let's vote on the consent agenda. Okay, thank you. The next item, we have several items for decision. The first one is our 2012-13 secondary road construction program, and Mr. Rhodes is going to present that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I'm going to introduce the item, and we've got several individuals from the North Carolina Department of Transportation here this morning. Woody Jarvis, our district engineer from the Washington office, is here to actually make the presentation. He has with him Jordan Scott and also Preston Hunter. I saw our division engineer, Neil Laster, come in and out, so I don't think he's going to be able to join us this morning. But we are pleased to note that we've got about double the money we had last year. This is encouraging. You don't hear that often up here. So Woody's got a number of items scattered throughout the county he'd like to present to you today, and we're looking for approval of a resolution afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. I want to thank y'all for having us this morning. Certainly in paying attention to the preceding items that you have discussed and heard and dealt with, highways fit right in with hospitals and taxes and schools, and we've got a lot of partners, and we want to be partners with all of those entities. We get a lot of interaction through the year with all of you. We talk directly to commissioners about constituents' concerns. We deal with the manager's office on road projects. We deal with the schools and getting utilities placed on our right-of-ways. We deal with senior centers and crosswalks and your county engineer, and we treasure the relationship that we have with Pitt County with regard to doing our work. Money's tight. We've got a little glimmer here today of more money to offer you in a secondary road improvement program than we presented last year. The reason for that extra money is in some of the projects that we have had planned in the past, we were not able to obtain right-of-way, and we were able to obtain some alternative sources of funding for projects like the Fire Tower Roundabout. We actually got some federal money to build that with and carried our secondary road improvement funding forward to apply in other areas throughout the county. This secondary road improvement program is exactly what it is. It is a way for us to address items that are more than our general maintenance funds will allow us to do. It's a way for us to do items that are not quite of a TIP nature in stature. I mean, none of these projects really compete with building bypasses or new roads, but anywhere you throw a rock, you can find road work that needs to be done. And we're working, as we always have, to try to do the most with as little as possible. And with that, I'll introduce you to our program. We've got $2.4 million roughly programmed, spread throughout the county. Make sure I can do this wrong way. First off is Field Street in Farmville. About 370,000 miles. Will address a mile and a tenth coming out of Farmville, going out toward 264A. Some railroad crossings, some ditching, some paving. A big enhancement to that corridor in the Farmville area. State and House Road, $450,000. Mile and 3/10. We're going to do some ditching. We're going to do a couple of lifts of asphalt. We're going to try to improve that road and bring it up to modern standards. I think in a lot of our secondary roads, when we were building roads every year, our objective was to get pavement in as many places as we could, as fast as we could. And that we accomplished a lot, but we did not build in and account for a lot of the abuse these roads take as the county develops from trucks and heavy equipment and other things. So our program now allows us to go back and identify some of those places that need help and try to put those dollars on the ground where we can strengthen and widen and resurface some of these routes that are getting worn out in the county. Emma Cannon Road, kind of out off the Aden area, $1.1 million, 3.2 miles long. It crosses County Home Road. It's a pretty big connector route as it's being used today in our secondary roads. A lot of need out there. We're going to do some ditching. We're going to do some widening, and we're going to do some couple of lifts of asphalt to try to make Emma Cannon consistent quality with County Home Road. Warehouser Road in Aden, pretty much the same story, a lot of need. These are roads that we get a lot of calls on from the public. These are areas that we're trying to address. $160,000, some ditching, some paving. Hopefully that will make a big improvement out there. Closer to Greenville, Old Highway 11, as you Y off of the main line of Highway 11 going into Winterville itself. We're going to resurface and strengthen that, and then across at the other side of the intersection go into the credit union and the John Deere Place, $125,000 intersection improvement on Davenport Farm Road. Our 6 projects are pretty much scattered through the county. We want to make a presence everywhere we can. We're working every day on our maintenance activities. A lot of our stuff, paving, is weather dependent. It's hard to pave when it's wet. It's awfully hard to pave when it's cold and be successful. Our folks take complaints. Our folks go out and meet the public. We listen and operate and work with folks and try to be good partners with regard to drainage and pavement and safety concerns. And in that same vein, our money consistently gets smaller. Our workforce consistently gets smaller. It really puts us in a position where we do need to plan, and we do need to try to get as much bang for our money as we can. What I'm asking you to do today is adopt the attached resolution to accept and endorse this program so that we can carry it on to the Board of Transportation and proceed with the work. But before you vote, I brought with me today Jordan Scott. Jordan was introduced. Jordan, stand up. Want to let you know that when you start drawing everything that you do together, Jordan is a native of Pitt County. He grew up Belvoir area. He went to school at North Pitt High School. He's a North Carolina State graduate, civil engineer. He's been working with us a couple of years now. He's meeting with the public, he's meeting with your staff, and he's helping us get our work on the ground, and we're mighty glad to have him. And I just wanted to introduce him to you today because he is a product of the county and a product of what we're all doing.
So since he's from Belleville, is he any kin to Eugene?
Well, I'll let Mr. Eugene answer that.
Okay.
Let me tell you.
If he is, he's a good guy,
He's
right?
a fine young man.
Very
Let's put it that way. Don't judge me by him. He's much better.
Okay, any questions we have of Mr. Jarvis?
What about Davenport Farm? Ain't it one of those roads in this group that you?
Yes, sir. The what we have scheduled on this, Commissioner Hammond, is the intersection where it comes into Highway 11. We're going to add a turn lane so that people can go right easier and go toward Ayton.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to specifically get on the record whether or not, with regard to this proposed secondary road improvement plan, did you meet with the county engineer about this plan?
I did not specifically meet with Phil, but we do talk on a regular basis, and we did come to James Rhodes for guidance from Scott, and we have tried to get as much input into where we put this money from your folks as we can.
Well, I'm concerned about consultation with the county engineer in that he has had extensive experience, and it would be important to me as a county commissioner to know whether or not he was consulted. I understand that you might have more contact with Mr. Rhodes, but the county engineer is important in terms of our making a final decision. And to change the subject just a bit, I had a constituent who was very concerned about some discussion in the newspaper about the future designation of US 264. And as one commissioner, if there's any change in the designation of 264, I want this board to be consulted. And you might be able to influence that.
Well, I can move your comments over to the appropriate folks in our chain of command. It's a little bit above what I take care of on a daily basis.
But we don't want to do roads. Take that to your leaders too.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I move that we approve the resolution that has been presented to us
Second.
Today.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Let's vote. Mr. Jarvis, let me say one thing about the roundabout on Pine Tower. When I heard that you were going to put a roundabout there, I was very much frightened because the roundabout that I am most familiar with is up in one of our northeastern states, and it's a double lane. And there's a secret to getting in there. When you get in, you're supposed to go through the inside, and then when you get ready to get out, you're supposed to go through the outside. So that means you got to trust the fellow on that outside lane that he's going to let you in. I was always fearful of that roundabout. So when I saw the one on Fire Tower, one lane, I said, great, you did a good job, and I think it is working well. I use it quite frequently.
Thank you. We're pretty proud of that ourselves.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, the next item, we had a motion to adopt that, so we move on to our second item for decision, and that is the U.S. Cellular Tower site. And Ms. Gallagher, Mr. Dickerson.
Yes. And Mike Doran is present in your audience this afternoon from U.S. Cellular. This board may recall on July 9th you entered into an option to lease a 50 by 50 patch of land on this parcel to U.S. Cellular for a tower site. in order to comply with the law, and they have gone through their option process, have worked with the city of Greenville, and are in the process of getting their building permits. In order to comply with the law, when they have expressed their intent to exercise their option, which Mr. Doran has expressed to me, we have to advertise, since the lease will last for a term longer than 10 years. We have run that advertisement to be in compliance with the law. There were no upset bids received, and so as a formal action by this board, you must vote to accept their proposed lease rate as the highest bid as a result of that upset bid process.
Okay. Any questions?
I move that we accept the bid that has been presented.
I have a second. Okay. Let's vote. Okay, the next item is similar to that item in that we need to grant an electrical easement to Greenville Utilities on this property.
I move that we accept the
Second.
easement request.
Okay, any discussion or questions? Let's vote. Thank you. The next item is the approval of some surplus county vehicles. If you recall, we have been discussing this for some time now. We want to have a comparison between selling some of these surplus cars locally versus selling them on gov.deals, and this will allow us to sell some at the local option here and see what they turn out to be.
Move approved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr.
I'd
Chairman.
like, excuse me.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Ladies first.
You go.
You go.
Okay. I just want to remind the public that this was up for discussion a few years ago, and we did extensive research and whatever, and we have been being very successful on the govdeals.com, and in our sales, and our local county officials and heads of departments have a lot less to do. We don't have to advertise. Everything that's declared surplus, we have to approve. So I just want to know that, I just, kind of want the public to know that we've been doing very well on this. So, and I have no opposition to let's doing this and seeing how it works as far as, but I want us to make sure we take into consideration what it costs us in time and effort when you figure out what we get from the vehicles. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner McLaughlin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to, in view of what the comments that Ms. Ward, Commissioner Ward just made, also, I think that the public should know that this is a great deal in terms of having an asset as this auction business is employing many of our citizens who pays taxes, and they are paying back to the county. So I think that this is certainly a great opportunity to utilize the individuals that are working and paying back the taxes for this, and then to also reaping the benefits from this deal. As we looked at it, I think that the information showed that these vehicles would be bringing back as much as it would have been on govdeal.com. So we're happy that we're doing this, and we're appreciative.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Webb.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification for me on this. Will this money, will we be able to use that to purchase a car? I don't know how much it'll yield, but can we put that back into?
The money goes back in the general fund, then it rolls back into the budget process for the new year.
Is that considered surplus money?
It's just money that
I didn't know if it was money that we had already accounted for receiving, and if we hadn't accounted for receiving it in the previous budget, then
this money is not being counted on as being received in this year's budget, so it'll fall back to general fund, then it can be reappropriated July 1. Some departments would like to see it fall back into their departmental budget specifically that the cars came out of, but it's easier to have it fall back in the general fund and then reappropriate it through the budget process.
I understand. And that's the only reason I asked, because with the situation with the vehicles that they're in, is since we're selling some old ones, maybe we can buy a new one out of it. Just food for thought on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? Let's continue voting.
Mr. Chairman, this vote would include both the declaration of surplus and the adoption of the resolution in your package, correct?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, the next item is the award of a contract to repair 12 of our 14 election sites.
Move we approve.
I second it.
Mr. Chairman.
Now,
And this is the low bid.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a motion and a second now. Questions?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I would like to make a motion that we approve the individually low bid. I don't know what if that was his motion. If that was his motion, certainly I would like to stand with this, but I'd like to have it individually approved per site as the lower bid. Is that what the motion was, Mr. Owen?
The motion was, as our agenda has illustrated, there were several bids granted on this, and the staff recommended the low bid, and that was my motion.
Was the low bid individually, I'm asking?
For 12 or 14.
The recommendation was to grant the contract to Garris Grading and Paving, which, by the way, I do not know, to repair 12 of the 14 sites. So it was to one bidder, the low bidder for all 12 of the sites.
Mr. Chairman,
Correct.
kind of, we bid this two ways. There's 12 sites being bid. We asked the bidders, I think we sent this out to 9, advertised, we had 4 respond. We asked them to bid two ways. One is to give us a lump sum for all 12 sites, then alternatively to give us a separate bid for each of the individual 12 sites. Garris Grading and Paving was the low bid overall at $211,754.25. And then as we bid out the 12 sites individually, Garris Grading and Paving was low bid 10 of the 12, and then you had Bernie and Bernie was low bid on one, and then it was Barnhill's low bidding on another.
I can share, Mr. Chairman. The reason I state that, I think that now we are in a position that we should look at fairness in anything that we do. We haven't given any bids, to my knowledge, to any black contractors, and Bernie and Bernie being one of the lowest bid of the 12, I think that he's deserving of that, and we give individually to the rest of them. I think the majority of them was to the individual gentleman that we are proposing to bid on, give the bid to anyway. So, in all fairness, I think that we ought to give a bid, the lowest bid. If we go individually, Bernie and Bernie would get a particular site.
I guess my question, Mr. Demery, would be, would one of these contractors be interested in just doing one site? Because they were asked to bid all 12 of them.
I can't answer that, probably so. I do know one, Barnhill, when we sent the bids out, because I asked for it 2A's, they said they would give us a better bid if they did them all instead of one.
Well, that's what I was
don't
thinking.
know about any of the other ones.
But anyway, you've heard the comment, so what is the pleasure of the board? We have a motion on the floor that we grant all of them, as is stated in our recommendation, to Garris Grading, which has the lowest total bid. That's the motion on the floor.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, would we save any money by letting him do this one? Or could he get it as cheap?
The difference between Bernie and Garris Construction on the one Shelmerdine site was about $530.25.
$530. So it would cost about $530.
It costs more.
To have Garris Grading and Paving
To do them all.
But if you did award Shelmerdine to...
Excuse me. No, it actually would be lower because his bid is lower. Unless you... Let me make one comment. Unless there was any change order. When we bid this, I asked them to give me a per unit price to repair and patch holes. And we estimated a square yard out there, say 100 square yards. If we have to change that, the price may go up a little bit. But you're talking less than $500 if you were to award it.
Cheaper. Right? Do you think that he's just good? Because I think it would be wonderful to get. He's a small.
I
producer.
don't know. I don't know.
You don't know what kind of.
I don't know.
Just, for a point of reference, the unit price for the patching, Bernie and Bernie on this site was $144 per square yard. Garris grading and paving was $68 per square yard. So, yeah, it's on the patching.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. If I have no substitute or no alteration to that motion, we will vote on it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I did want to make a substitute motion.
Okay.
And my substitute motion was to allow each individual contractor to bid, to have that as a motion.
Okay. You've heard the motion. Do I have a second?
Well, I would have sucked if you just had that one. You go just separating all of them, and you've got too much trouble there.
Well, I don't have any problem have that one.
You just let him have that one. That's what he bid on, wasn't it?
Right.
Correct.
That's all.
So just draw that one right out and let the other guys do all the rest of it.
Fine. Okay, so are you seconding that motion?
Yeah, I'll say if
substitute
you go with
motion,
one now.
Okay, the substitute
So
motion
save a little
is
money, but give him an opportunity to.
that we grant 11 of these sites to Garris Paving, and the one Shelbadine site we grant to Bernie and Bernie. That is the motion.
Mr. Chairman, you have a partial vote in process.
Okay.
And since the substitute motion would need to be voted on first, I'd suggest you clear out the screen.
Okay, so everyone, let's go on and vote and clear out the screen.
And this does not vote for anything.
No,
it's
this is
clearing
just
it.
clearing it out.
Mr. Chairman, the other low bid on the Farmville side at $5,010 by Barnhill Contracting, right, in all fairness, we should allow John to award to see if Barnhill's interested. If not, then the second low bidder then is Garris Grading and Paving. So technically, I'd recommend doing 10 to Garris Grading and Paving, which you're low bid on, do the 11th to Bernie and Bernie for the Shelmerdine site, and then the 12th one for the Farmville site at $5,010, award that to Barnhill Contracting. If they're interested, it may not be worth it to them to mobilize for that one site. If not, give it to the low bid, then Garris Grading and Paving, if that makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Do you alter your motion to
Yes,
reflect
sir.
that?
I agree with the man.
Your second?
Yeah, but
includes that? Okay.
but you're
saying
going to vote
basically
on March
Okay.
first anyway. So if
No, we vote on substitute
the
first.
substitute.
Oh, but in March. Yeah, that's
One question, Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir.
The recommendation in the agenda was the best saving money for the taxpayers of Pitt County. Is that correct?
Administrative and economically, yes.
All right, sir. Thank you.
I thought he said it was a cheaper to have that other.
I thought he said that too.
No, I lied.
Wait a minute. Nobody's lying.
No,
It's
I
two
was
different questions.
misunderstanding
He is
you.
talking about the administrative cost, the pure cost of paving. The Shelbadine and the Farmville site did have a lower bid. And the substitute motion is that we exclude those two, grant the 10 to Garris, the Farmville to Barnhill, and the Shelbadine to Bernie and Bernie. That's the motion. Yes, you may.
Yeah, that's that. Here's the man.
Mr. James, I think what John was saying is that, yes, when you look at the exact figures that we have there, Bernie and Bernie is $500 cheaper. Potholes tend to grow every day to some degree. So what he was saying was that if we have more quantity on that site than we estimated, then it's very likely that Bernie and Bernie's price would be higher.
Because we did a point-in-time survey of all the 12 sites, like maybe say December 1st. So since that time, there could have been further degradation of the asphalt of the sites. That's what the unit price is for, to patch potholes.
And our administrative cost and our inspections cost would be great on working with two contractors. Fine, if I'm not objecting to Bernie and Bernie, but I just want to answer your question to make sure we understood that.
I
No,
want to say
he's
Buchanan
not telling
knows
you two
Mr.
different
Buchanan.
things. It's just a little more complicated than the answer that he gave you.
Okay, Commissioner Ward.
It seems to me, and I think I agree with what
Mr. Owens is alluding to. When we usually give out bids, when you have one company that you're working with, if this motion that is on the floor, we could possibly be working with 3 different companies to do a project that we put out there as a total deal, or however you want to call it. And I just feel like administratively, and whoever's going to supervise this, that we'll all end up, with it being better for the county as far as money is concerned than having to supervise 3 different projects going on at the same time. Thank you.
And I would say that I believe that our leverage would be much greater working with one contractor than 3. So if no further discussion, we will vote on the substitute motion first.
You haven't cleared out your screen yet.
Mr. James, will you just vote to clear
Vote,
out
you
the
just
screen?
clear out the screen.
Jimmy, could I ask you one more question?
Sure.
All right, on page 96, there, where it had the bid tabulation, I don't quite look at, all right, how come Bernie is so high there, Melvin? What's going on?
Well, I looked at that too, but I was, again, looking at the lower bid that he had on one site. And I think, again, I just want to say, and just in all fairness, we talk and we preach about fair representation. We have to do things, I think, to reflect this county when it comes down to bidding process. We to my knowledge, have not did offer any bid to any black contractors since I've been this year or last year. So, Madam Ward, my concern is that we are being fair. Now, I think being fair to have one person, one business, one site offered to a black contractor is being fair. The gentleman said that we're saving Phil Dickinson said that we're saving $500. You heard him.
Well, I see the figures. I understand
yeah, well,
that.
Well, I think that's what we ought to do.
I don't want to be drawn into
so, I mean,
whether I'm not opposing or for any particular company, regardless of who runs it and who owns it.
Okay, I think we probably debated this enough, so let's vote on the substitute motion.
Read the substitute motion.
To grant 10 sites to Garris, Graydon, and Paven, 1 site to Bernie and Bernie Construction, and 1 site to Barnhill Construction.
If you added, if they don't accept it, Barnhill, that it would fold back into
the second one.
Second one.
I would do that for both of them if they're going to be. I'm out to save money. I don't care whether you're black, white, red, yellow, pink, or what. I believe in doing it. It don't make any difference to me on it. I want to save money for this county. That's the reason I was elected, I feel like. The heck with the rest of it. But I'll vote for that too now. I hope you'll honor that price.
Okay, that did not pass, so now we will go to the original motion, which is to grant the contract to Garris Paving. Okay, thank you. The next item is appropriating $220,000 to pay for this item that we just approved. Mr. Demery.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Any questions?
When will it be done? Because these people have been over there at BEP on us.
I'm going to work on the contract today, so.
Won't be long.
No, sir.
Okay.
Please do Mr. James first.
Yeah.
Look, those people, that's a bad place, John. You know that.
And I do want you to be aware that I made some of the sites that were resurfacing the whole site, such as Bethel, Shelmerdine, and Grimesland, that we may have to shut it down a day or two while the contractor's in there. And I will make sure that the public is fully aware of this prior to shutting it down, so they will know that.
And let the town manager order it. Notify the town manager,
Yes, sir.
please.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's continue voting. Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner James. Okay, thank you very much. Next item is a resolution to increase funding to the Clean Water Management Trust Fund. Mr. Rhodes.
As detailed in your agenda package, the Clean Water Management Trust Fund is in the process of requesting from local governments their support in seeking increased funding from the legislature this year. In your package, you'll see a number of items throughout the history here since 1996 that have been, a lot of projects have been funded here in the county, totaling over $11.5 million, and that ranges from sewer improvements for like CMSD, also some stormwater improvements. The county itself just completed a Swift Creek Fort Swamp stormwater study. There have been some improvements at Rose High School using these funds, and also your Environmental Education Center has been funded through an acquisition process with these funds. So all said, staff is recommending that we do forward an approved resolution for this support.
Any questions?
Jimmy, on the Swift Creek project, those ditches come up in the city of Greenville, don't they, James?
Yes, they do.
Because I walk those things. And do we get help from them, or how does that come about? I know these people pay a drainage tax to go there, and I'm sure that the city of Greenville has to do it.
There is some, you'd really need to talk with Mr. Vanderford about there. There has been a lot of discussion about that. Those people reside within the city limits and how that's actually, the taxes are levied in there. So it deals with the stormwater management tax as well as the drainage district taxes. So I don't really know how that stands right now.
If you people don't know anything about it, it goes at Coastal Chemical, all in that particular area. Big.
Okay, Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rhodes, if this funding occurred, where would the cut be to allow the money to be provided?
There is no discussion of that in this resolution today.
I have concern about asking for additional funding when you don't propose where the money would come from.
I do not propose, and nor has the agency at this point.
Any further questions or discussion?
I make a motion that we accept this resolution.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Okay. Any further discussion?
I could answer Tom's question. They have a drainage board on Swift Creek, Tom. They can level what taxes they want to. So if you want to know where the money would come from.
Okay.
Isn't that law, James? They do. Isn't that the way the law is? I know I have to pay one farm I own. I pay more drainage tax than I do county taxes on it.
But that's specific to the improvements along that drainage district.
So they're not on that particular one.
Any further discussion? If not, let's vote. Thank you. The next item is a budget amendment to come from contingency funding, and Mr. Rhodes, you can present that.
Yes, sir. Staff is requesting $5,500 to assist with the position that is currently funded. It was funded previously at a higher rate or more hours per week through the communities putting prevention to work funding. That funding, that grant that came through the health department, as many of you are aware, has been expended. It went out sometime the end of last year. What staff is requesting is that this position pick up a little bit more than 1 day a week more. There's been a lot of work done on it, recreation and wellness-wise, at the district park because of this position. Just to mention a few things, the crosswalk's gone in. We've got some connector trails. Most recently, if you've been out there, the picnic shelter is well underway, and a sizable grant has been secured by virtue of this position. So with that...
Move we approve it.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Did you have a comment?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
I recognize Mr. Johnson.
I have concern about how much money we have in this contingency account, Mr. Manager.
Yes, Mr. Commissioner Johnson, the Contingency fund started at the beginning of the year at $300,000. With the funding request that's included in the budget today, you'd have a balance of $182,905 still.
James, didn't they say that this would make up, this position would probably make up this money and more?
Already has, yes.
I cut him off. That's when I was too fast, Gene.
Right, okay. So
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Let's vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. The next item is another budget amendment, $2,000 to come from contingency to pay the cost of an appraisal report that we've already done, right?
Correct.
We've already done, so.
Move we approve it.
Second it.
Any discussion? Let's vote. Thank you. The next item is another budget amendment. This is $41,000 from contingency to go to the Board of Elections, and this is as a result of the second primary that we had to have this past spring. So that money is already spent also.
Actually, Mr. Garrison, when we prepared this, or Chairman Garrison, when we prepared the agenda, $41,000 was identified. Dave Davis has informed us as of Friday that's higher than the $41,000. It's actually $75,000. Dave is prepared to make any comments to explain. I mean, this was a mandated cost because we had to have the second primary as to the first primary. First primary was May. Second primary was July, obviously in the new fiscal year.
And what's being passed around now is the revised budget.
Okay. May I ask this? It was on television, Mr. Chairman, that some counties in North Carolina is going back to the ballot voting, especially all the short ones and not using computers. They said it would save a tremendous amount of money. Well, what
I think
about
we've
that?
already done that, haven't we?
Huh?
Yeah, yes, sir. We already use the paper ballot system. About 85% of the state does. You can use either the paper ballot system that we do, and then the other 15 counties use the touchscreen voting.
But is it cheaper that way?
It depends on whether you want the costs on the front end, where the touchscreen you have to buy multiple machines for a site. They're $5,500 a piece, or you buy the least expensive machines, which we have, where there's one machine per precinct, but then you have the paper ballot costs. So it's kind of six one half dozen other. Yes, sir.
So they're not doing too good. Okay.
And I would just note the difference between your $41,000 amendment that's included in your packet and the $75,000 that just got distributed was a $34,000 supply item. And Mr. Davis can speak to the 34.
May I say this? Did you keep up with it this time on these early voting? Some precincts, as far as the amount that voted at some precincts, did you need all of them? I know the cost was high, so that's what I'm looking at.
As far as the early voting sites, for the general election, yes, sir. We had in 2008, we had a total of 6 sites. This time we had 5 sites. And, for example, here at the county office site, that last day was a 2.5-hour wait.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. I know that most of them you need, but were there 1 or 2 in some locations that they did not use much?
Oh, we had a tremendous turnout at every
one of them. Okay,
yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? Mr. Holder, with the contingency funding request that we're looking at now, what would we have left in our contingency fund after they are taken out?
I believe it is going to take us
182,
to 182,
almost 183.
Almost 180.
Okay, thank you. And we don't usually. I think this year didn't we put in extra?
We budgeted
money
a little
in
higher.
The contingency fund?
Typically, I think historically, last couple of years, I saw $100,000 had been budgeted, and this year we went in at $300,000.
We did 300. That's what I was thinking. Thank you.
I don't believe we have any choice, Mr. Chairman.
I don't think we do either.
No, I think you got to do
Mr.
it.
Johnson.
I agree with Mr. Owens, but I'll make the motion if he doesn't, that we approve this.
Second.
Okay. Motion made, second. Commissioner Webb.
Can we include a letter to the State Board of Elections asking primaries be decided by a majority and not by to where we have to have second primaries
like a
because
plan.
they don't bear the cost. We do.
Yeah.
Is that part of the motion?
Is that, do you want to include that as part of the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Do you accept that as part of the motion?
Well, reluctantly.
Do you second that as part of the motion?
I didn't second it, second that.
Chairman,
Who seconded?
But I would second it.
Melvin.
Okay.
Sure, why not?
We clear?
Yes.
Let's vote.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I want to thank personally Mr. Holder, Finance Director, for coming to the podium when there have been questions relative to contingency. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir. And also on your monthly financial report, the second page of that report, we are keeping a running total of your contingency. So these items will be added.
Thank you. Next item is appointments to the Pitt County Board of Adjustments. We have two. We need to replace Mr. Congleton, and we need to appoint a new alternate. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd nominate Ralph Skinner to replace Mr. Congleton.
Okay, Mr. Skinner, would you like to go on and vote on that one independently and then do the alternate as a separate vote?
Well, I have a nominee.
Okay.
Is this the one, if I thought was that Lakeisha Alston, is that not the one?
That's the next one.
That's the next one. Okay. Very good. We'll support that.
And I'd include in this nomination, if it's okay with everybody, that we table the at-large until we get a greater pool of interest. There's not a lot of interest, and as we advertised earlier, I think we need to advertise more. We need to really emphasize the importance of these boards and really expand our talent pool and get new names, new faces that have a stake in what goes on in this county, just like the regulars do. We need to expand our pool. That would be my motion.
Mr. Owens.
Glenn, I think that's what I said the last time when this came up.
Yes.
Now, I still feel that it's a very important responsibility and duty. Now, tell me a little bit about Mr. Skinner, your person you nominated. I do not know it.
I do not know him either. I just read over his qualifications and knew that we needed to make an appointment and based it off of what we had.
Would you feel confident in delaying both of them, all these points about the adjustment?
Could I speak to Mr. Skinner? I
Oh,
do know
excuse me, I'm
him.
sorry.
No, that's fine. I mean, I feel like he would be very qualified
Okay, that's what
to
I need.
serve. He's, I think he still works over at the university, and he's lives in Simpson, which is the
Very good.
ETJ. So, and we have to find somebody that's in the ETJ. That's why it's so hard. And he has a master's in education and is, willing to serve. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a motion for Mr. Skinner.
One
We're
other
ready.
thing I want to say about him, which I think is a positive thing, is he's a graduate from our Citizens Academy, correct? I think it is, yes.
Okay, so let's vote on Mr. Skinner.
And we've encouraged those people to apply after they participate.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to be sure. We had a recommendation from the Development Commission that we have Ms. Lakeisha Austin. You said that when does that come up?
Next
Okay,
item.
all right. I just want to make sure.
Okay, now we will further advertise for the alternate's position. Okay? Now let's move forward to page 120, which is the appointment to the Development Commission. And as Commissioner McLaughlin has pointed out, there are three recommendations there recommended by the Development Commission. What is the pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recommend Ms. Lakeisha Austin.
Okay, we have a motion for Lakeisha Austin.
Could I include in that Thomas Asbell and Tyler Russell, since they were the other two that were recommended for us to consider?
All right.
And I know both of those people.
Mr. McLaughlin is
Yes,
okay with
yes,
that. So any discussion? Let's vote. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a closed session. And before we go into closed session, does anyone need a 5-minute break?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Maybe 10.
5
We
minutes.
will take a 5-minute break, and then we will come back, and our attorney will take us into closed session.
I did. I called Tommy.
Welcome back to our meeting. We now will go into closed session. Madam Attorney, will you take us into closed session?
Yes, it has been suggested that this board go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A4 to discuss matters relating to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the area served by the public body, and also under 143-318.11A1 to prevent the disclosure of information that is privileged or confidential pursuant to the law of this state or of the United States, or is not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes.
I have a motion. Motion second. Let's vote. Thank you. Thank you. We are back out of our closed session, and we have one item of business that we need to take care of. Mr. Webb, would you make a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd make a motion that we approve our minutes from the December 17th, 2012 closed session as to the content.
Second motion.
Any discussion? Let's vote. Mr. James? Okay, thank you. One final item, Commissioner comments. We will start with Commissioner Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, I would encourage any of the public to put in for these boards and commissions. They're very important to the operations of the county, and I would ask that the public get more involved and submit their names. I think they'd really enjoy it once they got involved. And a couple quick items. Next week I'll be attending the Legislative Goals Conference for the Association of Commissioners. Some of the big items we'll be asking for from the legislature, which I expect approval on our level for, is increasing our ADM funds and lottery payments back to the counties for education. These are monies that can be used in most anyway, and safety is a big one, as well as our curriculum studies. Also increasing money to mental health on the state level. That's been on the decline for a long time, and I think we've seen, not just with tragedies, but just in general service, the need to address and assess people with mental illnesses. And something that I got a few phone calls on was about there was a man's house in Aden that got peppered with some rifle rounds, not intentionally, but just from target practice and target shooting. And I've gotten several calls about maybe us looking into requiring a berm or something if you're going to shoot across an open field, because bushes aren't slowing rifle rounds down. And the man, one round went all the way through his house. There's a couple more chips and stuff all over his bricks, where he's been receiving some unwanted rifle fire. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner McLaughlin.
No comment.
Commissioner Johnson.
No additional comments.
No, sir.
Mr. Owens.
No comment.
Mr. James. Mr. Hammond.
Motion that we adjourn.
Motion. Okay, let's vote. Thank you very much.
You said it.